Hello, good evening. Hopefully you can hear me. Send me a message there in the comments if you can, just to let me know everything is working okay and the signal is being beamed across. I also have this streaming on YouTube, and I started to hear myself back there. It was kind of reverberating as I've got all these windows open. I've got a stream into YouTube, I got a stream into Facebook, then I have Facebook and YouTube open separately as well to make sure the video is heading over there. So hopefully everything is working. There's Ann Dunford says hello from a snowy upstate New York. Yes, I did see some reports in the news today, Anne, that there was going to be some serious snow out your way. So hopefully you're coping there. We have a much milder bit of snow here in Ireland at the moment, but Dublin is pretty much unaffected. David Larkin is there. Hey, David. Margot is there. She can hear me. Paul can hear me. Brilliant. So I think it's safe to say that everything is working there from a technical perspective. So this is the first sort of evening doing one of these live talks. It's also going out on YouTube, so you can watch it there as well if you want. It's the first one of a new year. I had a bit of a break over the autumn. I had intended to try and do more of these talks through the autumn, but honestly, I just got absolutely laboured down with work, and I wasn't able to find the time to do it. So I have scheduled a number of talks over the next couple of months, and it is my intention to keep it going until the summertime anyway. And kind of once the summer hits, I'll probably take a break again and then try and jump back into it again in the winter. But for the purposes of this particular talk, the idea with it was to discuss some iconic European photography locations, to look at some of the images that I've taken from there, to discuss the technical aspects of how those images are taken, to discuss where you go in the location to take those pictures, and then also I've brought some files in for kind of post-processing purposes to try and give a little bit of an editing session with an idea that relates to that specific place that we've just looked at. So the three places on the menu to discuss this evening were Lake Bled in Slovenia. I put it down as kind of southern Lofoten because I was going to say the island of Hamnoy, but then you've got Sakrazoy and you have all these tiny little islands just in the south of Lofoten. And I wanted to show some images in that very dense, small little area in the south of Lofoten. And honestly, I didn't want to get caught out by calling it the wrong island, so I just decided to say the south of Lofoten there. And I want to also show you some pictures from the Black Lake in Montenegro, which is an absolutely stunning and unvisited location for sure. Somewhere that we don't have a workshop scheduled to go there this year or next year, but definitely go back at some stage. It's an incredible place, and somewhere I've really enjoyed photographing over the years. Greg is saying hello, Lara is saying hello, David Potts is saying hello, Mike is saying hello. Loads of people in the comments there, guys. So thank you so much for saying hello there. Declan Clark is there. Keep the comments coming, basically, guys. I'll keep an eye on the video and the comments, and if you have any questions about any of the locations, or you want me to go back through something that I do with the post processing, you can fire a question in there, and yeah, I should be able to see that. I'm just going to make sure before I continue any further I can see all the comments now. I've got a slightly better view of it happening now. Okay, perfect. Mary Kinsella is there. Derek Emerson is there. Helen is there. Loads of people there. Noreen Lucy, John McIntyre, Becky. Thanks so much, guys, for everyone for joining. You're very good to be here. Appreciate it. I'm just gonna move this screen over here. Serious operator error going on here with the technology, but not to worry. I'm gonna just reduce that, and I'm gonna start sharing my screen. Okay. Okay, so hopefully you should be able to see my Lightroom there now, and I'm just going to also just make that work on YouTube. There we go. So you should be able to see my Lightroom now. I need to double check just for my reference again, just to make sure that there's nothing awry, that I can also see my Lightroom beaming through here, and just want to double check, guys, that there's nothing happening untoward with the technology. Yeah, we're all good. Okay, brilliant. So Lake Bled, Slovenia. Absolutely stunning location. Stunning location, and somewhere I've photographed many times over the years. I wanted to kind of use the time with the talks as well to kind of bring you through the little map here and to show you some of the specific points and ideas around photographing these places. So I'm just going to search Lake Bled here in my Google Maps, and you can see where Lake Bled is. If I zoom out a little bit and out again, Lake Bled is in here. So normally when we go to Slovenia, for example, we would fly into Venice because it's a good international airport, and then drive up. It's about 2 or 3 hours, something like that, to get up to Bled. I have to say though, it would be great if you could fly directly into Ljubljana from Dublin, because it would be a much easier skip over to Bled. But Ljubljana is not linked to Dublin and is generally not well serviced as a kind of a direct flight destination. So I think Venice is a good place to fly into if you're thinking of visiting Slovenia or Lake Bled. I've also sometimes popped over there from Zagreb, which is over here, because my wife is from Croatia. So that just pull out of the map of Europe and just bring it back into Slovenia. You can see where it is. It's a small little country, kind of wedged in between Austria and Italy and Croatia. And Slovenia was was the first country within Yugoslavia to declare independence. In I think 1989 or 1990, and it's a very small and very beautiful place. But let's focus on Lake Bled. So what Lake Bled is super famous for is this monastery. You can see it here in the middle of the lake, and what's brilliant about this place in terms of photography is that weather is very settled. Like, you've a great chance of getting reflections there, so much so I would say I think I've had reflections pretty much on every shoot I've ever done there. I mean, that's not strictly true, but the vast majority of the time it's very still, certainly in the spring and the autumn. So it's a great chance to get reflections. It's also because of the stillness that you have there, because of the moisture of the lake, because somewhere like Slovenia, for example, can get warmer during the day and then cooler during the night. You've got a good chance of mist on the lake as well, which of course can create some incredible atmosphere. I know with the mist, for example, we can kind of think about, really trying to predict the mist to the nth degree, which I have definitely engaged in myself quite a bit. Looking at the dew point, for example, things like that, to really try and figure out if you're going to have mist. But I have to say, in my latter years, I just feel like if it's still enough, I'll go. As a general rule, my photography with the mist. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. I noticed there was a mist in Dublin Bay this morning, for example, and I didn't go because I looked at the wind forecast and it was about 8, something like that, 9 kilometers, and I thought it's just a touch too high, and I wanted to go to the Phoenix Park to shoot some of the trees in mist as well, but I just thought the wind was a touch too high. I'm not sure if there was mist in the Phoenix Park this morning, but yeah, Lake Bled is an absolutely fantastic place for mist. So in terms of the logistics of shooting there, it's actually really easy. There's a car park right here, and all you do is park your car in there. You get a ticket on the way in, you can pay with a card on the way out, and then there's this lovely area along this beach here. You shoot back towards the monastery, and then all along here, this is where this boardwalk is. It's a famous kind of boardwalk, and you can see I have my star on it there, and it gets you this incredible view out towards Lake Bled. And you can see I have another little heart on my map here, and I also like this side angle. So normally when I'm there, I will start with kind of group shooting along this boardwalk. Sometimes we'll grab a shot along here with the trees. You can see there's little trees on the corner here, and then we tend to work our way over to this spot and shoot across the monastery. You can see the monastery from all, you know, lots of different places all around the lake, but you can see from here you're very close to it on this side, which is great in terms of it being quite strong and prominent in your images, and also because from this angle here you're shooting east, so it's backlit in the morning. Okay, so the light is coming in behind it, which again can create some really amazing mood and atmosphere. Okay, so let's take a look at some actual pictures. I see Steve has jumped on there. Hey Steve, I'm just getting a question already. So what focal length would you shoot at that distance? So let's take a look at some of the pictures, and then we can discuss the focal lengths. So normally for me, it's a kind of a 24 to 70 sort of lens that I would use to photograph it, and I'll quickly skip to the fourth picture here, and here's a wide angle version of it as well. So kind of 24 to 70, or else a kind of a wide angle if you have the right light, you know. But you can see in this frame, for example, the sky is totally full with beautiful clouds, and that's what allowed me to shoot it at such a wide angle and still have strong interest through the frame. But I guess one of the points I wanted to make about a scene like Bled, and something to consider yourselves generally with your photography, is if you have still conditions and you have kind of, you know, some amount of clear skies forecast in the morning. Excuse me, I'm just taking some water. I would really try to arrive to the scene very early, and Bled is one of those places, especially with Bled, because you're also going to photograph that warm light that's on the monastery itself as the kind of the blue of the day kicks through. So this shot's taken like about an hour before sunrise. So Bled is certainly somewhere like that has those phases of light, and actually that's how I structured the images that I was going to show you of Bled in this talk, was to show it in terms of the phases of light. So here's the pre-dawn light. Being brutally honest with you, when we're doing workshops, we always have to kick for touch, and what that means for people who are maybe unfamiliar with the game of rugby is that, you know, we can't be in a situation where we're in a car and the light is breaking and we haven't turned up on time. You know, it's just completely unacceptable. Having said that, you know, if I'm on my own, I would be a little less careful about when I turn up for my shoot. And I don't mean that I'll turn up after sunrise or anything like that, but what I mean is that when it's very clear and you have forecasted clear skies, the likelihood is you can start shooting an hour before sunrise, at least 45 minutes. So when we're doing a workshop, we normally turn up that amount of time anyway, just in case, because as I said, it is just not acceptable to be in a car and be missing light. But if I was on my own, I would hedge my bets a bit more. So if it was totally clear, I would arrive, you know, to most locations 45 minutes to an hour earlier, particularly when I have this blue hour light with the warm light on the buildings, that contrast that I want to photograph. And with Bled, I guess you could, because there's the warm light in the buildings, you could probably turn up 45 minutes an hour early on any type of conditions. But in general, I just wanted to make the point that if I have much cloudier forecast, I'd probably only arrive about 20 minutes before sunrise, 25 minutes before sunrise, and I sort of hedge my bets that way. But you can see that that blue light, and hopefully you can see how it contrasts nicely with the warmth of the building. And this is a blend actually of two shots, and I have those I have those images in a folder as raw files, so it was my intention, just as we get through that, to maybe show you a quick blend with that as well. So backlighting again, this shot is actually done from close to where you park the car, and you can see how that light comes up really early here, the beautiful mist, that perfect stillness. Again, when I have that forecast where I feel the light might come through, I do I do get there very early for sure. Focal length wise, again, this is with my 24 to 70, probably around 30 or 40, something like that. I think that Bled as a location, you can have it like wider angle, super bling, colorful, the whole thing, but it actually works great as a really minimalist, clean, simple shot as well. So here's one from the last time I was in Slovenia. We just had that incredible mist all around, and it was actually the same morning as I took this shot, but just a little bit later. And you see how the mist is kind of enveloping the top of the monastery, and the bottom as well in the reflection. But that light is kind of breaking up in the higher points, like there's clearances. But I just got a longer lens on for this shot, and it's a good bit later in the day as well, of course, because the lights are turned off. And that longer focal length, I mean, sometimes when we're thinking about focal lengths, I find people might think, well, a wider angle is better for a minimalist shot, but actually a longer lens is often better for a minimalist shot for something like this, because it allows you to zoom in, just focus on the object. You obviously have to leave good space around it, there's no question about it. Like, it needs to be spaced properly, and it needs to have good clearance on, top, bottom, left and right, which hopefully this does. But it does allow you to actually simplify the scene more sometimes using that bigger focal length. So for Bled, we can see the mid-range lens in effect here and here. We can see the tighter lens effect in this particular image, and you could probably shoot those focal lengths irrespective of the light, but we're also getting a different lighting situation in the images that I'm showing you here. And finally, the full-on bang light popping through the whole scene, and everything just exploding, and lovely autumn colors there, great clouds, and you can see that backlighting. You see where the sun is coming. So when you shoot Bled, you arrive early, you shoot through the phases of light. Sometimes I'm going to phrase this the right way, because I know lots of the workshop participants are potentially on this, but sometimes people, not people on the workshops ever, but people can get a little impatient, and they, I sometimes say people want to zip around and go to different places. But for me, there's certain locations where you have to shoot through the phases of the light. I know that the compositions can be fairly similar. We can vary our focal lengths, as you've seen with Bled here, but in a place that is backlighting, for example, it's going to be so different when the sun creeps up above the horizon versus as it's kind of 10 minutes before sunrise, and the sky is illuminating with a pink or not or a magentas and things like that. The sun comes up, it gets warm, it floods light into the front. You have the blue hour as well, where you're going to get a totally different light. So I very much feel like Bled is a place to work through those phases of light, and you can hopefully see from the images that I've shown you get some really great results. Barry's asking me, what's the best time of year for Bled? I haven't ever been in the summer, honestly, Barry, but as I understand it, it's really, really busy in the summer. I'm sure you can shoot it. I'm sure it's still, I doubt it gets cool enough to get mist in the summer, because we had one spring trip, for example, where it was abnormally warm. Maybe you were on that, Barry, actually, now that I think about it. It was abnormally warm, and we didn't get mist, so I think for me, spring and autumn are the best times, in the sense that you have the warmer days and the cooler nights. But obviously, weather is a bit mad these days. I've been there in the autumn where it's been 20 and degrees, and I've been there in the spring where it's 25 or nearly 30 degrees. I remember one time, which is, it's not meant to be that way in early May, late April. But I still think, irrespective of, the weather is unreliable. We all know that. We know that as landscape photographers, we turn up, right, and we go places and we hope that stuff's going to work out for us. But I have to say, they're the periods I would go in. And I keep actually repeating this thing from the Irish Light talk that Thomas Heaton said, which I thought was actually really pertinent, and I've been thinking about it in a few different contexts recently. You'll often regret not going, but you'll never regret going. And I think that applies to our other shoots when we're out in Dublin Bay or Glendalough or wherever your local spot is for shooting, if that's in Ireland or in the States or across Europe or wherever you're kind of dialing in from. We'll never regret having a go and going for the shoot. Like I went out to Phoenix Park, I was last weekend. This is a kind of new set of images I'm working on, and I was playing poker with a few mates, I have to say, and we were about a bottle deep into the wine, and actually I won the poker, I have to say. So I had a couple of £100 in my pocket as well that I just won. And I was saying to the lads, it's going to be really still tomorrow morning, and it's going to be freezing, and it's going to be misty, and I'm going, and you stop offering me more drink. And then two more friends turned up at about 11:30, and I was wavering slightly, but then I thought to myself that thing that, you know, you'll often regret not going to take a photo, but you'll never regret going. And the next morning I left then at about 11:30, 11:45 with, you know, pockets full of cash from the lads. It was great. And I went out to Phoenix Park the next morning, and I didn't click the shutter once. I didn't take a single photo. There was no mist, there was no colour, there was no frost, there was no dew, there was like none of the elements that I was looking for in the photograph at all. But actually I still had a good morning. I'm glad I didn't have another drink. I'm glad I went out, walked, I thought about it, I got some ideas for compositions that I want to return for, and it just wasn't a waste. Okay, back onto subject. So here's the side angle then. Actually, here's a shot without a reflection. Now that we go there, so this is if we're the first few shots that we looked at with Bled, they're all taken along this boardwalk that I mentioned, and then these next couple of shots are taken from this side angle here. So there's one where you get that slightly different perspective on it. I've toned that very blue. It's a long exposure. You know, a decent bit after sunset actually, this shot, and there's a sunrise from that other angle again. So the side angle is nice. You can see it's side lit. You know, you see the way the light is on one side of the monastery and it's dark on the other. So the lighting is coming from the side versus the backlighting, which can be a little bit more dramatic. And that will bring me to something that I want to discuss about you know, the post-processing and shooting this location, which is the need to do some blending, but we'll come to that now in a second. And finally, I just wanted to show a couple of other pictures from around this area. So always with the big lens for me in Bled, looking for the little details, like the people coming out in the boat in the morning. The backlit mist definitely helps to make this a little bit more interesting. And if you know the area well enough, there's some nice little kind of little spots just behind the lake, essentially, where there's agricultural land and it's really sheltered little valleys, and the mist comes in there and the light breaks through about an hour after sunrise. So sometimes with the groups, what I had done anyway was you know, shoot Bled, shoot it through all the phases of light. The light comes up over the trees, backlighting dies quickly. You know, like once it comes up over the trees and the light comes through, you're kind of done for. So then go into another spot that's a bit more sheltered, that's holding a bit more mist, and wait for the light to come through there, you know. So that, for example, those other shots we just looked at were, you know, in here. So in this little valley, that little river there, is where that other shot. So that's a nice way to do Bled, is to start here, do the sunrise, and then take advantage of the mist as it's there. You know, you don't have to go far. It's only kind of 5 minutes or something or 10 minutes to get into these spots. So any other questions on Lake Bled? I'm going to show a quick bit of processing on it, and I'm just keeping an eye on the comments there, guys, as I'm going. Barry said, yeah, we had no mist, but still a great location. It is, Barry. You can, like, I'm probably showing the shots with the mist here this evening, but like it's an absolutely class location. Like it's excuse my French, but it's hard to feck that one up. Like, you know, it's the perfect reflection, bang, in front of you. It's an absolutely stunning place, and yeah, somewhere as a photographer, you know, I would definitely highly recommend visiting. So I wanted to show you guys a couple of things about lighting and Lake Bled, and then hopefully this will help in other contexts. So if we come back to our map for a second, you can see there's my wee star. Okay, you can see here's the monastery that we're shooting. So we're shooting that direction. We're shooting to the east. Okay, now the sun will come from here, from the northeast in the summer, and spring it'll come kind of more straight on in the autumn, and of course from the south in the winter. So the sun will track different positions of the monastery throughout the year as it moves, but it'll always be kind of backlit in some way, Bled at sunrise. And when we come over to this point, and the lights coming in from here, look, hopefully you can see my arrow, lights coming in from here, we go from here, we're side lit. Okay, remember I mentioned that. Just want to show that again quickly so we can get this point. So we're side lit, the light is kind of coming in from the side, but when we look straight across, we're backlit, and it's much stronger, the light. And what that means is that you need a different technical solution to deal with backlighting versus side lighting. Side lighting has a much narrower dynamic range. What that means is that the dark shadow area to the highlight area is something that your camera can generally manage. With a soft graduated filter or something like that anyway. Side lighting should be something that your camera can manage. But Bled, while we do have a side lit shot, the main shot you see is backlit. You see these? So when I have this very backlit shot and the sun is coming up, you can see to get the detail in the sun, let's go to film strip so we can see that a bit better. So get the detail in the sun there, or some detail in that area. Look how dark everything is. So you really have to do a wide range of brackets, okay, to get that dynamic range. Now the problem as well is that when you shoot straight into the sun, what happens is you also can get, you see this lens flare that's happening here. I can see some here, I can see it all in there. So when I'm shooting Bled or any location straight into the sun and I have the sun in my frame, I take a range of brackets from one that captures the detail at the darker end, and I keep going up in one stop increments, up, 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 until I have nice detail in my shadows. Now if I notice at this point that I have nice detail in my shadows but I have lens flare in my frame, what I then do is put my hand over the sun. Okay, and I do that literally by putting my hand over the sun. And you've noticed when I put my hand over the sun, there's no lens flare in here anymore, and there's no lens flare on this bank. Okay, and normally I'll do that a few times, you see, to make sure that I've covered the whole situation and make sure that I don't have any flare in the important parts of the picture. Okay, so if we just drop into Lightroom then for a second and we take a look at these files, you can see I have this range of exposures that we've just looked at, plus the hand shots at the end. So what I would do with a really wide dynamic frame like this, the content is all still. Okay, and what that means is that, what I mean by that is that it's not moving particularly. Like the clouds are moving, I know, but like it's not like a wave that's, you know, you're visibly looking at it going in and out. There is some movement in the clouds, but it's nominal. And if I take these exposures quickly enough, everything should line up. And what I mean by that is, in this shot, the cloud is in pretty much the same position as this shot. And when everything lines up like that, and we don't have too much movement in the frame, what we can do is we can do an automated merge to HDR. So I would just grab the set of files, 7 of them in this case. Again, another question I always get asked about this is, how many files do I need to do to bracket? How many shots do I need to create a high dynamic range blend? Well, it's not set. It depends on how wide the range is. It depends on the light you're dealing with. But a good rule of thumb is start with a dark one, keep going up in one stop increments until you have a nice bright one, and then you're done. Sometimes it'll be 3 or 4 shots, sometimes it'll be 7, sometimes it'll be 10. But if you gather that range of material to bring back, like I've just described, you won't have a hassle when you get back. You'll have enough images to work with. So back to it here for a second. So grab those 7 files, right click, photo merge, and hit HDR. Now this isn't going to be a detailed blending class. I've done lots of bits and pieces on that before, but I do want to, as I said, just give some insight into the specific location of Lake Bled, post-processing, and hopefully something that you can apply yourselves later. So the big trick, or one of the important things for me at least when I'm doing a blend like this, is that I make sure that auto aligned is ticked, but I turn off auto settings. You see, auto settings makes the contrast look very funky, so I keep auto settings off, and then I merge the file together. And I'm going to do this very quickly. Very quickly. The file is blending together. The computer is getting slightly pissed off at me, but hopefully it will be okay. There we go. Okay, so here's the merged file. This is a new DNG which encompasses the detail of the other 7. Okay, so normally when I have that, then I start to restore the dynamic range. So I'm going to say overall, for example, this file needs to be a little bit brighter. And then what I can go in and do is, because I've done the merge, I know if I put my radial on there, it'll pull those details back a little bit. Just pull the highlights back there. I'm going to do another radial on there. Pull the highlights back again, reduce the contrast in there, and just darken down that area a little bit. Going to get a linear. Pull down the sky. Okay, so that's really quick now, but you can see with just those first couple of moves, I'm going to lighten this area here as well and just add a little bit of warmth. Okay, not perfect, and I know I need to fix this down here, but don't stress out too much about it. It's not meant to be a blending class. Reduce the contrast. I can't look at it. I can hear somebody going, that bit's clipping. Okay, so we've done a quick blend on it there. We've got it, you know, I think in a much better situation, for example, than it was there, or in the darker one. We've got the detail back in. I wouldn't personally use a grad with a file like this when you're shooting straight into the light, because the dynamic range is too wide for the grad to deal with anyway, so it won't do a very good job. And when you shoot with a graduated filter straight into the light, you create more lens flare than we have here. So that's a nice segue into our next point. Okay, so we have this other file which has no lens flare in it, but it has my hand obviously. So what I'm going to try and do with this file, okay, is I'm going to try and match it up color wise, something similar to this one. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to just lighten it up a little bit overall. I'm going to get my linear. I'm going to pull down the sky like that, bring that down. I'm going to get my radial, and I'm going to put it in there. I'm going to lighten that area up a little bit and add a little bit of warmth, and I'm going to see it's burning out here, so I'm just going to subtract that sky. There we go. Okay, so let's just have a quick look between them. Not identical, but not a million miles apart. Okay, so I'd be happy enough with that. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to take these two files. I'm going to grab the first one, going to hold down just a command to get the second one there as well. Okay, and I'm going to right click on those two files, and I'm going to go edit in, and I'm going to open as layers in Photoshop. What that's going to do is it's going to take the two files out of Lightroom and into Photoshop for me, and it's going to open them up as layers. Okay, now if you don't know a little bit about Photoshop, this next part, or if you don't know the basics of Photoshop, this next part might be beyond your skill set, but I would encourage you to try and do this when you want to fix lens flare, because and shoot into the light and shoot Lake Bled first thing in the morning, because trying to clone out those lens flare marks is a nightmare. It is an absolute nightmare. It really is. So the first thing I would do is what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the layer in the bottom, which is our primary layer, and I can see there, I thought there was something slightly out with these files. So what I'm going to do in the sense that they don't match up exactly right, so what I'm going to do is hit edit, and I'm going to auto align the layers, and that's just going to make sure that the files are exactly on top of each other, because there's clearly been just a little bit of movement in, maybe I picked the hand file at the end when I should have grabbed one at the start, but it doesn't matter. I've done the auto align now. Okay, so that makes sure the layers are lined up properly so we can blend them together. So I have the hand on the top, I have the primary file down the bottom. I'm going to add a layer mask on the hand down here on the right, and I'm going to hit Command I to invert it. Okay, so now I have the hand shot, which has no flare in it, hidden above my primary file, which is this one below, and I have a black mask. So what I need to then do is get a brush, 100% opacity on white, and go over to my lens flare and start to brush it out, just like that. There we go, perfect. See how easily that gets rid of the lens flare? Now it's not quite right in the sky, I have to say. I probably wouldn't do that. The sky got a little bit light on me there, which I didn't like, so I might have just cloned that little bit of sky out, but getting that texture back in there is phenomenal, how easy that is, you know, versus trying to clear all that out with cloning and stuff, which would just be an absolute nightmare. Noreen's asking me, did you leave the lens flare in the file? Well, hopefully, Noreen, at this point you've seen me remove it, so I will definitely remove significant lens flare like that. Now that image has been you know, edited further, of course, and tweaked, and I can just give you a look at the final iteration that I had previously edited of that. I just let things go much more in here deliberately. I wanted that feeling of the light just like pouring out from there, and I did some dodging and burning really to lift up the colours, but you can see absolutely no lens flare in this. Totally crisp, blended together, detail where I want it, and that's like Bled and shooting backlighting. Dino Marsango has just joined. Hello, Mr. Marsango, how are you, sir? We need to get Dino on here one day to show us his amazing post-processing. You know, drop a comment in there, guys, if you'd like to see Dino edit live someday. Steve Crozier is saying that would be a nightmare to print. Steve, I'm just going to be very crude about that and say that that's not my problem. Oh, it could be my problem, I guess. But yeah, I suppose, honestly, Steve, I'm not thinking about those things when I'm editing at all, but maybe I should be. Okay, next up, let's look at, that was like Bled. Let's skip over to Norway. There's Ita Boyle has just joined. Hey Ita, how you doing? Long time no see. I hope you're keeping well. So we were in Lake Bled in Slovenia. We had a few nice sunrises there. We had a couple of nice drops of Slovenian vino after the shoots in the evening, not after the morning shoots. We probably had, what do they have nice in Slovenia? They have nice Malvasia for the whites. And we weren't too bad in the morning. Okay. So all the way down here, squeezed in between Austria, Croatia and Italy, we can see Slovenia, but what we're going to do is make our way up to Norway. And I'm always amazed how long Norway is, and I know that there's people from Ireland and there's people from the States watching this video, but to me, you know, a European flight of an hour and 45 minutes means you go past about 8 countries, you know. But in Norway, when you fly to Norway, you fly into Oslo, down here in the south, and to get up to where we're going to look at up in Lofoten here, you fly to either normally Buda or to Tromsø. It's Tromsø, if I can find it, because I just have all photography points marked. But Tromsø is somewhere up here. There's Tromsø there. So you fly into Tromsø or else Buda, which is a city slightly further to the south, and you're the guts of 2 hours just in an internal flight in Norway, which to me is absolutely extraordinary that it takes that long. And then you take a little, often coined the by the workshop participants as the Indiana Jones plane. It's like a 20-seater or something like that, or smaller, over to these little islands called Lofoten. So I see a few comments coming in there. Dino saying he remembers that morning very well. Well, Dino, you might also remember Ethan Boyle saying yes to Dino presenting. Declan Clark, great to see Dino do his stuff. So Dino, you're under pressure now to come on board at some stage and do the live presentation. I will say I know Dino knows I'm only joking as well, but there's no question about the post-processing skills, and I think his English is so good now he could do it no problem, but I do know he's slightly apprehensive sometimes about presenting in a different language, which I also understand. Okay, Lofoten. So we flew into Oslo, we took a plane up to Buda or Tromsø, we jumped on the little Indiana Jones Express, and we got ourselves over to Lofoten, and we flew into a little place called Leknes, which is, there's Vari. Leknes should be up here somewhere. There's Leknes there. Okay, we took our little plane into Leknes, and normally when we do workshops out there, we're based in Leknes for a few days, and then we go down to the southern part of Lofoten. But this isn't about telling you about the workshop. This is about telling you about the locations and the techniques. So I wanted to discuss this little southern area because it's just insane how this little sort of inlet here at these two tiny little islands of Hamnoy and Sakrisoy, and then into Reyna, in this little area. It's only a kilometre or two. Like it's such a small area, but the quality of the locations in such a small area are incredible. I can see Barry is saying we're travelling by map like Indiana Jones. Is that, are you suggesting, Barry, I'm a little bit loose with my movement on the map, a little bit kind of, we're not getting the not getting the appropriate time to figure out where things are? I'm not sure what you mean there, Barry, but I'm going to keep going on nonetheless. So Hamnoy, Sakrisoy, this is this bridge here where this very famous picture of Lofoten is taken, and on this bridge you're looking over the little island of Hamnoy, and you're seeing this incredible view, which is this very famous view, of course, of these little red cottages, and it's probably the most recognizable view in Lofoten, I'd say, and with good reason. It's an absolutely incredible place to photograph, but it's so interesting that just you're staying in just these little red houses. There's the red houses there. You're photographing from here, but you've great shots over here. You've beautiful shots on the other side of this bridge, all along this viewpoint, up in this overlook over Sakrisoy, and then this overlook into the town of Reyna as well. So it's just this tiny little few inlets running along the map here, Hamnoy and Sakrisoy and over to Reyna, and you just have this density of incredible locations. So let's take a look at some of the pictures. So I just put a few from this exact same spot just to kind of illustrate how photogenic it is and how it can look so different in different lights. That was the really purple dawn. This was a blue dawn. This is also a blue dawn, but with a much longer exposure. You can see how different the texture in the water is. Like, this is about a second or two. So again, that's something I would often encourage people to do when we're at places. This is probably another place where the shot is unquestionably repetitive. Like, you're doing the same shot again and again sometimes there, but the light is changing. The shutter speed you can choose differs as well, which gets you a very different texture in the water. So I would strongly encourage that that kind of, holding fire on the bridge in Lofoten if you go there, and trying to capture it in a range of lights, in a range of shutter speeds, and you'll get very different results. Here's probably my favorite personal picture from that bridge, which is when it was belting down snow, and I used a flash to actually freeze the snow passing through the frame in this one. It also comes in green, if that's your thing. Very tough tactical shot up there. Doing this requires it's not one shot, it's about 10 shots to get the lighting on the buildings, the lighting on the snow, the northern lights in the sky. It's just such a wide dynamic range that it can be a very tough technical shot, but something definitely that's rewarding. And one of the things I wanted to point out by showing this shot, this is a slightly wider angle. You see you have this very pointy mountain here on the left, and you have this other slightly more rotund but equally beautiful in a different way on the right here. And those two mountains form the basis of so many different shots that you can do in that area. This is just walking around the cabins where we stay, with there's fresh snow on the ground, and it cleared up, and the northern lights came out. And one of the beautiful things, if you ever go there, about photographing is that because the locations are so close, you can just walk out the back of your cabin. You can literally just walk out the back of your cabin and start shooting, and you can go back in, and people can use bathrooms, or have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or a hot whiskey maybe even as well, if that's your thing. Moving across just slightly, ever so slightly across the bay now. I know that this has changed somewhat. There's more cabins here in the foreground, but I still like this position from the other side, and that's that pointy mountain that was on the left side. Do you remember it? On the left side of that very wide angle of the northern light shot. So that's a really great focal point in a lot of pictures that I've taken in that little area in Hamnoy. There it is again, very similar composition, just totally different lighting. That's that same mountain, but from a slightly different position, couple of 100 meters the other way across the bridge towards Sakrazoy, rather than on the Hamnoy side. Very long exposure for those gentle sort of pastels. Like there was a reflection there, but it's not perfect. So definitely smoothing out a shot when there's just an outline of a reflection works really well. And you have to remember as well that the locations here in this part of Lofoten, they are tidal, the foregrounds, rather than lakes. So it's not that often that it's going to be absolutely still. Looking across, it's not like Lake Bled. It's definitely not like Lake Bled, the weather in Lofoten, so or the Black Lake in Montenegro, which is the place we're going to take a look at next. Again, just locations that keep giving, fresh snow. And I just actually left this shot on a time lapse, and I took a load of frames, and the northern lights was just coming in and out, and people were cold, and it was kind of cloudy, and they didn't really want to go out, so I just actually threw on a time lapse. Myself and Thor were just in a little cabin there, and I think we were sipping on a couple of hot whiskies potentially as well, or maybe a beer, and then just going out and getting some shots, letting the light come through. It was just an amazing place to be, just an incredible place to be. And again, you can see that's that same mountain, giving different things from slightly different angles and different lights. I think it's like Disneyland for photographers. Honestly, it's absolutely incredible. And there it is, of course, again in the Northern Lights. And I often get asked, where's my favorite place to photograph? I think people are kind of looking for an insight on what tour will be best, or what do I think is the best place to photograph. For me, it's always the newest place I'm going to that I'm most excited, because I've been to Lofoten so many times. It's not as exciting to me, but if you sometimes people asking me that question, I do say that maybe this area just of the south area of Lofoten, where you have Reyna, Sakrazoy, and Hamnoy in this little 2 kilometer stretch, is possibly the most photogenic place I've ever been. Just in terms of the range of incredible compositions of these mountains that you can take. It's a little hike just up the back of Sakraso, and you kind of climb up this hill, and that gets you the separation between the town and the mountain. And this shot works really nicely in blue hour. I had to work quite hard with the masking to make sure that this was really nicely separated in terms of that white of the snow against that blue background. But I love that cleanness in the color of the snow personally, the warmth of the evening light in the town, and then that deep blue of blue air as well. It's a nice contrast, I think, of colors. And here's the same mountain, the same town, but you can see this is the elevated position I mentioned, where you can kind of see between the gap there, and this is the lower down position. So this is the position for the people that don't want to walk up the top of the hill, and this is the lower position. I can see a question from Greg there. Is spring or fall, aka autumn, a good time to go? Most picks are winter. I think that winter has been the time that we've traditionally gone, but in 2026 we're going to go in the autumn, because I've seen some pictures of it in the autumn and it looks absolutely stunning in the autumn, and you get into a kind of a range of other locations that you can't get into in the winter. We just did that same thing this year where we went to Senju in the autumn, where we've been doing it previously in the winter. I think if you're going to do an autumn trip, it's not a Northern Lights trip per se. It's like check out these incredible mountains with stunningly beautiful autumn color trip. If we get perfect conditions for Northern Lights, then I would do it. But the landscape is much darker in the autumn, so for Northern Lights it really helps when there's snow on the ground, to illuminate the foregrounds. So that's why I wouldn't be as crazy about chasing the lights in the autumn there. But yeah, I think I have not seen much from the spring, Greg, honestly. But I'm sure it's very beautiful with fresh greens in the spring. But definitely, these places work great in the autumn. Autumn too. We're going to go there, as I said, 26, and we're going to scout some new mountains to the south of Lofoten as well. So we'll have a different trip happening there as well. So this is the overview from Reyna. So we saw some from Sakrazoy, we saw some stuff for the bridge in Hamnoy, and then this is the overview of the town in Reyna. And it's it's like a magical fairy tale, really, to me anyway. These places are just so beautiful, and Reyna is really set off when you get that reflection in the middle of the sea there, and it's kind of protected, so it's somewhere that does reflect a little bit easier than other spots around there. And you can see another blue air image from that location. And I've just kind of processed it really gentle in this sort of style here, just to make it incredibly smooth and minimal, I guess, to the eye. Yeah, so that's a quick run through of those locations in Lofoten, and I'll just reference that map again. So Hamnoy over the bridge, looking across, a couple of shots from this side. Then we have the overlook. Here's the island of Sakrazoy. We said there was a lower and a higher shot, and then the overlook at the village in Reyna. And there's lots of little nooks and crannies along the way as well. But I mean, it's so dense, as I said. So if we, for example, just click here and we try to get directions to Hamnoy, so it's 4.7 kilometers, so 2.5 miles, and just insane locations all the way along that stretch. Post-processing tip, we're not going to get as detailed as we did on the Lake Bled one, but something that I find when I'm shooting in Norway is the these little red cabins here. This is a raw file, by the way. These little red cabins are, of course, an incredible feature of the landscape there, and you know, there's something that I think most people want to capture in their images while they're there, right? So this is totally unedited now, this file, so I'm just going to just show you something really quick with this. I'm going to, there's a bit of clipping in the sky there. I'm going to see, will that come back? Put the linear on there, pull the highlights. It's not perfect. I probably would blend a little bit of sky out of here, but I'm not going to do that for the purposes of this demonstration, because I just want to illustrate one thing. I'm just going to reduce the contrast in this image, lift the shadows ever so slightly. Definitely needs a little blend in the sky there. Anyway, I'm going to warm it ever so slightly too, okay? And the little trick I wanted to show you, or the little idea, certainly whenever I'm editing any pictures of these cottages from this bridge, I'll always do a color range mask, and I will pick the reds of the cottages like so. I'm going to hold down shift and get another color there just to widen that a little bit. It's spilt out a little bit in here, which I don't like, so I'm going to hit subtract and subtract with a linear. Just make sure that that's all subtracted out of there, and I might just also refine that back ever so slightly too. Go back into the color range, and there's my refine. I'm just going to refine it slightly back so I have a better selection on just the cottages. So often what I'll do with those, when I have a good selection like that on the cottages, is I'll lighten them and I'll warm them up a little bit and I'll saturate them. Okay, so if you just take a look at the way the cottages were, you see how they've just really been lifted in the frame, and I think that's an important move, and I could work further on them to try and enhance things a little bit more with them. And as I said, this file does need some blending to deal with some of the highlights in here and in the sky. But you can just see how that really lifts the color out of that specific place. And as we kind of go through things over the next 20 or 30 minutes, I also wanted to show you how I apply a little bit of this technique, a combination of the brush tool and a mask intersection for editing autumn colors. So we'll get to that as we get through the some more images here. If I just reference you back for a second to these pictures here, though, you see how my reds are lovely and lifted in all my Lofoten pictures. So we'll always get some selection on those reds, and I do like personally that as a technique of saturation in my pictures. Is I would very rarely personally grab, you know, the global saturation slider, and I mean I do sometimes, but you know, I would rarely actually add or subtract much saturation from my images. I tend to just saturate a specific point within the picture to draw attention to that. We could desaturate everything else but the houses, so once we have the houses we could also duplicate and invert that mask and then desaturate. So then we have a kind of like a monochromatic sort of feel to the image, and then we have the houses, which we can tweak a little bit further. We want to make them a little bit more green, maybe lift up the saturation a little bit further, lift the shadows in there. Let's darken then the sky for the crack. There is definitely a clip in the sky. Anyway, it doesn't matter for the purposes of illustration. Okay, so you can just see how the attention is really drawn into those houses there. Now if I reset it, you see it's such an important I think aspect of any sort of editing to do with this part of the world is grab those colors in the houses, and hopefully you can take that tip into other aspects of your editing. Any other questions there, guys? Feel free to post them in. Neil Arthur says, love that view from Hamnoy. It's a hard one to beat, Neil. To be fair, it is honestly is a hard one to beat. It's one of those places like Bled, where everything just lines up. Like it's incredible. You stand on the bridge and, before having gone there myself, I didn't understand the view, or I didn't understand the view. I didn't know what you were standing on or how you were seeing things like this. And then you stand on the bridge, you're like, yes, that makes sense now. You can kind of quantify the whole thing. And yeah, it's super cool. It's super cool. Okay, I'm going to keep going because this is not going to be a super long talk. I'm going to be maybe chatting for another 15-20 minutes. It's meant to be a kind of 45 minutes to an hour thing. So Montenegro. Let's look at Montenegro. Montenegro is an undiscovered gem, in my opinion. Somewhere we've run many workshops over the years and developed a really good personal relationship with some local people there, which was needed. And also I speak a little bit of Croatian, which is definitely useful when you're there. So I often joke with my wife. I say, ja pričam dobro crnogorski, which means I speak very good Montenegrin. Now, I don't speak Montenegrin or Serbian, but as far as I can tell, my Croatian works perfectly well there. The languages are very similar, so that definitely helped with yeah, so sometimes like the rangers would come out in the park and they're like, "What are you doing? You're filming a movie here or something with your camera." I'd just been able to speak to them in the local language was really helpful. And there are also people who are a bit shocked when you're over there and you start talking Montenegrin or Croatian or whatever it is to them at 6 o'clock in the morning with 10 tripods around them. But yeah, and we had a really good local guy we worked with there who was brilliant, just brilliant. But it's a stunningly beautiful place. So let's jump in the map, Barry. Let's do it again. Let's spin the wheel. Okay, so we made our journey up to Lofoten. God knows, I mean, getting from Dublin to Lofoten is tricky. God knows how we get from Lofoten to Montenegro. So Montenegro is again a former Yugoslavian state. It was six, wasn't it? It was Montenegro, Macedonia, Serbia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Croatia. Did I say Slovenia? I might have missed one. Anyway, don't worry. So there's Sarajevo. There's Bosnia. You can see Montenegro there. So Montenegro is directly south of Bosnia and Croatia. And normally, how we went there was to fly into Dubrovnik, which is in the south of Croatia. Very beautiful but very expensive place. I just see one more question coming in there. Declan's asking me, is Lightroom your preference over Camera Raw? Do you know what, Declan? They are the exact same animal. It's a Skoda Octavia and a Volkswagen Passat, a different body but the same engine. Like they do the same thing. I tend to go between the two. Like I use Lightroom when I've got a bulk of files to edit because it's easier to edit a bulk of files in Lightroom. The history works and a few things. But like today, for example, when I'm flicking around through different stuff, like I'm normally in Photo Mechanic here. And I'm going then from Photo Mechanic directly into Photoshop using Camera Raw. But because the engine is the exact same in what it does in Camera Raw or Lightroom, I have no problem using either or. Normally for the purposes of teaching and doing stuff like this, I find that way more people are using Lightroom than Camera Raw. So I tend to do demonstrations in Lightroom for that reason. But if you're in Camera Raw, anything that you see me doing in Lightroom is absolutely 150% applicable in Camera Raw. And what I would say to anybody with it is, like sometimes people say, oh, I'm a Lightroom user, I must learn how to use Camera Raw, or I'm a Camera Raw user, I must learn how to use Lightroom. And I honestly kind of think, why would you bother? Like, if you know how to use Camera Raw, if you want some of the cataloging features in Lightroom, fine, you might want to learn how to use Lightroom. but it will get you nothing in terms of increased control of your editing. It won't help you edit your pictures any better knowing Lightroom versus Camera Raw. It might help you catalog your pictures in a different way, that's for certain, and there's other functions in there that are useful. But in terms of the editing, it's no different. So if you're a Lightroom user, I would say stick with Lightroom. If you're a Camera Raw user, don't worry about it. Stick with Camera Raw. If you have a good cataloging system, anyway. Okay, Montenegro. We're back. Fly into Dubrovnik. Okay, right down the south of Croatia. And what we used to do then was we would drive then up to this little town called Niksic. And Niksic is where the local pivo, which is Crnogorski for beer, so Niksic pivo from Niksic here. Quite a bland but pleasing lager, and then from Niksic we drive up to this Dormitor National Park, and that's where the photography discussion relates here. And I always enjoyed this drive, honestly, because you're in Dubrovnik. Where is Dubrovnik? Somewhere here. No, that's Split. That's Savtat. Dubrovnik. Come on. There it is there. So you drive to Dubrovnik and you kind of cross over Bosnia for a bit. Then you go cut back across to Niksic, then north up to Žabljak, which is just borders, is the kind of entry point into Dormitor National Park. And it's quite a journey, honestly, driving through some of those countries. You can, when you arrive in Croatia and you see some kind of unfinished buildings, but then you go across Bosnia and into Montenegro, and the dilapidation is gradually becoming worse and worse. And then when you're coming back across going into Croatia, it's like entering Manhattan again. Honestly, it's a great experience. I love that drive, and you have to cross borders. You have to go across the border from Croatia into Bosnia. And then there's 2 border checks there, and then when you go back into Montenegro, there's another 2 border checks. So you always have the passports ready, and away you go. Okay, images. So, sorry, I want to show you one more thing. So Dormitor, where I'm going to show you images from, is a place called Crna Jezero, which Crna means black and Jezero means lake, so it's the Black Lake in Dormitor National Park. Let's see, can I find it here? Where was Žabljak? Žabljak. There we go. And there it is, Crna Jezero, which, as I said, means Black Lake. You can see there's actually 2 lakes here, and it is just a stunning location. It's very kind of not photographed much, I would say, as I mentioned, but it's a great spot to get the reflections. A bit like Bled is a great spot to get the reflections. You have a really, really good chance of going there in the autumn of getting nice reflections and nice mist on the lake. It's not guaranteed, obviously. Roman is asking, how long does the drive from Dubrovnik to Dormitor take? Roman, I would say about 3 hours. 3 sati. 3 hours. 3 to 3.5 hours. Something like that. I would say that if you went in the summertime, it would take a lot longer because the border crossings would be a pain. But going in the autumn time, as we did around October, it was always very handy. There was never any queues at the border or anything like that. And we often based ourselves in the town of Savtat, which is south of Dubrovnik, a significantly cheaper option than staying in Dubrovnik itself, which is outrageously expensive, quite honestly. And Savtat is where myself and my wife got married, so it's obviously a place that I like to go back. When we used to do the tour there, we would go spend 4 nights up in Žabljak, shoot out all around the Dormitor National Park for 4 nights, and then we would go back to Savtat for a night, and we would just have a nice slap up meal and a couple of glasses of wine and just kind of relax the final evening. Normally the weather in October in that part of the world, not in Dormitor because it's elevated, you're up at 2,000 meters at times, but down at the sea level at Savtat and Dubrovnik, it's normally centigrade wise, it can be kind of 20 or 25 degrees still. So it's if you're from the States. I'm not sure that's whatever, that's about 70 or 80 Fahrenheit. It's very, very pleasant, very pleasant. But here's the view. Here's the classic view in a way of the Black Lake. And this is a kind of shot with around 24, something like that. The lens, side lit again, so it doesn't require a blend. You can get all the detail in one frame. Here's the very first time I went there, which was actually in the springtime. You can see the colour difference. The trees are not autumnal, and the snow is actually just melting away there. Bit of light just coming across again, but you can see that perfect, lovely symmetry that the location has in terms of the how the mist just falls on it. And these types of locations, for me anyway, and Black Lake particularly, once I have the kind of wide angle shot, I'm always getting in tighter and trying to pick out the different elements within the scene. And the mist can just be incredible, like just rolling through here, big lenses, and just like trees just gently popping out of nowhere with beautiful colours, birds rushing across the scene, and the light is constantly in flux at the Black Lake. Like, it's somewhere, again, I would say that if you're going to visit, you kind of get there really early, 45 minutes to an hour before sunrise, and then you just let the light evolve. But it's a great one as well for people who don't like to shoot the same shot. And while I do disagree with that, as I've alluded to, I also do understand the boredom of shooting the same shot sometimes. But the Black Lake gives you a whole ton of variety. It's great for being able to just shoot the wider angle, shoot mid-range shots, then get the big lens out for stuff like this and start to pick out all the details on the edge of the lake. And you're looking for just that little bit of structure in the reflection, like the tree here, for example, just to bind it in. And then I would have just selectively lightened just the yellows in this particular frame. And I'm going to probably round up this evening's discussion after I've showed you a few more pictures from the Black Lake, where I do a little edit and show you how to really target in on some specific autumnal colours, because you might have some images left over from the autumn. So again, this is a long lens shot on the Black Lake, beautiful trees on the edge, and you see all this just they're kind of gnarled bits of shrubs, and they're very vibrant, the colours in them. This I would have processed very high key, like lifted the exposure quite a lot to make it very high key, but then just returned the contrast just into this part, and I would have specifically targeted the yellows again in this image, just to bring up those little colours in just those areas. I'm going to be saying the same thing, finding that little focal point with your long lens and the misty mornings in any location, if that's Glendalough, if that's, upstate New York, if that's Dormitor National Park and the Cerna Jezero. Your big lens is your friend, but you have to find a little focal point within that, that tight crop in a situation like this. That should have been at the start, because that was meant to show the big view. I got the order there slightly wrong, guys, because I thought I was all in tight shots. That should have showed you another big view in a very, very misty morning on this particular one. And you see the little focal point of the little yellow tree here, but then looking for the shapes and the repeating patterns of the mist as well. And this is actually, this tree is this tree, but on a totally different morning. This was just a still morning, like Barry alluded to earlier. Like Bled's still a great location even when you don't get the mist, and so is the Black Lake. Obviously mist is good though if you get mist. And I will not be left wanting in regard to hoping and praying desperately for that mist to come through. Something then that happens in the Black Lake, we saw this in some of the shots I showed you for after Bled, is looking at those phases of light, looking for where the beams of light just catch the mist, as the light comes up and gets a little bit stronger. you can't photograph into it anymore. The bigger view looks all gone because the sky is bland and washed out because the lights got too bright, so you're just looking for those little details. Just as the sun just tips over the bank on the left side of the Black Lake in the morning, you start to see those beams, and this was actually quite warm, the scene, but I just processed it really blue, just to give it the look and effect that it has. This is actually that other tree we saw earlier. You see that one there? This is a different morning with different light, different processing, and a totally different outcome, of course. But hopefully you can see, from the shots, the big view in the Black Lake, and how also just all these little views all around the Black Lake. It's one of the best places in the world for me, with my 70 to 200 or 100 to 400, just to really pick out those details, because those trees have interesting texture, structures and colours, and the way the light gets in there is fantastic as well, and the potential for it to be misty in there is really good as well. So it's a stunning place, that lake. So to kind of round things up for the evening and just show you something on post-processing, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't been to Montenegro in a few years, and the hard drives I have plugged in cover about the last 3 years, and I had to dig really, really deep to try and find any Montenegro raw files. So I thought, rather than it's a big messy drawer. I have these IKEA slots in my office, which they go into these wardrobes. It makes everything look very neat, but you just throw everything in and you just close it up. And I have a lot of hard drives in there, and I honestly didn't want to dig in there for a Montenegro file. I level with you. So what I did was I found an autumn file from Tullymore Forest in County Down, here in Ireland, that I took recently, and I thought I'd show you the technique with autumn colours with this file instead. So, a lot of those Montenegro ones they had a kind of a high key look to a good few of them. So it depends on what you have in your scene. Like with an image like this, where there's so much texture all over the scene, like there's no mist, there's no clean minimal space, I'm not going to make a picture like this high key. There's a question from Steve. You heard the lake has been a bit low in recent years due to drought. Have you heard anything? I haven't heard anything to that effect, Steve. But wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me. That something like that had occurred with it. So coming back to this one, the autumn colours. So if you want to make something very high key, like the edges of those lakes, for example, you need to have the right, lots of clean, minimal space and things like that for a shot like that to work. But if you have a scene like this, where there's a lot of texture, there's a lot of detail, I'm going to make the picture darker rather than lighter. Okay, so I'm going to do this really quick initially. I want to direct the eye in here. So I just want to show you this little masking technique for bringing out the colours in these scenes. So how I would approach a river scene with lots of texture is I would start off by unclipping the blacks with my curve, and I would pull it down nice and dark, just to make the overall scene a bit darker and a bit flatter. I would then come in with a series of radial filters to bring light and shape to some parts of the picture where I want people to look. Say along these banks, along this bank here as well, and in, operator error, I grabbed the linear rather than the radial, and in here too, and just lighten that up a little bit too, with a little bit of warmth. Okay, and I'm going to go crazy with this one. I'm going to darken it down a little bit more again, just to make it really dark and moody. And then I'm going to take another radial and I'm going to throw it right in the center, and that's just kind of directed my eye into that part of the frame. So that wasn't the important stuff. I'm going to give it just a little bit of saturation and fix the white balance ever so slightly. That wasn't the important point I wanted to make. That just is kind of a given that we would want to create some directional shape in our picture, and if we reset it, you can see how I have flattened the contrast and darkened it and directed your eye into the middle of the frame there. But what I actually wanted to show you was this technique of targeting specific colors, again with a view of creating additional directional shape in your autumn pictures. So how I would do this if I was using Lightroom is I would get a color range mask or Camera Raw. Declan, if you're using Camera, you can do the exact same in Camera Raw, and I will select some of these leaf colors. I'm going to hold down Shift. I'm going to select this yellow color back here as well. So that's got me some of the autumn colors in the scene, okay? But I don't want to brighten up all of them. So initially I'll just lift the exposure and I lift the yellows, okay? And that will brighten up all those yellow colors in the scene, but I don't want to brighten up all of them. I want to brighten up just some of them. So what I'm going to do after I've lifted them all is I'm going to intersect that adjustment with a brush. And now what that's going to allow me to do is once I start to brush, it's just going to brush my adjustment into the yellows where I want it to happen. That could be lovely and targeted there then. You see, I can also use this technique to really direct your eye again into this part of the picture where I want you to look. Okay, and if we just turn that on and off, you can see how I've just created that lift in just those parts of the picture to really bring that warmth just into the leaves and just into those areas there. So it's not the Black Lake. I'm sorry I didn't have it in the hard drive. I'm sorry, Steve, I don't know about the water levels there. But that's definitely a technique. If you have some Black Lake pictures, you have some autumn pictures, more specifically, that will work. So hopefully you can see my ugly mug on the screen now. I've changed it on YouTube and on Facebook, and I hope I haven't had too many technical issues. So yeah, I'm gonna finish up there. I've definitely been talking for a while now at this point, so just wanted to say thank you to everybody for attending. I know some of you guys are also some of our regulars. We'll be doing the private regulars post-processing evening tomorrow evening, where I'll be doing full start to finish edits, one kind of mid-level to entry-level image, and then one really complex picture. So I'll be doing two full start to finish edits tomorrow night. We have the regulars meet up then on Friday night if anyone's in Ranelagh and fancies a glass of wine. And next week then I will be back again doing this Facebook Live and this YouTube video, and I'm going to be looking at a similar kind of talk to this evening, but I'm going to be looking specifically at Nordic locations. So I'm going to look at stuff from Iceland. I'm going to look at stuff from a wider range of Norwegian locations, Senja, like autumn, winter. You know, that might feed into what you were saying, Greg, as well, about seeing some of these locations in different times of year. So make sure you join that Facebook event or check it out on YouTube next week if you want to see it. I can see lots of comments coming in from Lars. Thanks so much. Mary Kinsella, thank you. Anne Dunford, thanks. John Marr, thank you. Roman, Greg, Derek, loads of people coming in to say thanks. So really appreciate all the positive feedback, guys. Thanks so much for stopping by. And yeah, lots of opportunities. It's kind of a new year. I was trying to sell a lot of prints for the last kind of November and December. Then I took a little break, but I'm motivated. I'm ready to go again. So listen, guys, have a good one. We'll see you soon. Take it easy. Good night.